Hey everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, visionrecordingstudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And this is video number 7 of the audioschoolonline.com mixing contest. If you don't know what this is, go back to the YouTube channel and check under the playlist mixing contest, and is all 6 or 7 videos prior. I think this is video number 7, and we're getting to the vocals now in this video, and we're going to start to finish up this mix. So let's take a look at the lead vocals. So this might be a two-parter, we'll have to see. But let's concentrate on the verse vocal, the verse double, and the lead vocal tag, which are these 3 yellow tracks down here. Okay, so we're going to take a quick listen to this, and let's just hear this one section of music, and then I'll show you what I'm doing for an effects chain.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try.
Okay, so there's the lead verse, lead vocal in the verses with the double, and then here's the lead vocal tag, this track right here.
But nothing I could do is ever good enough for you.
Okay, that's what we have. So let's take a look at the lead vocal, the verse, right here.
Through the day without fear in my heart would send you away.
Okay, there's kind of the reverb and the delay, which we'll talk about in a second. Let's take a look at the signal chain, shall we? So the very first plugin I'm using is the Virtual Tape Machine by Slate Digital, as we are through the rest of the mix. Going over to the VCC by Slate Digital on the Neve console setting, like we are for the rest of the mix. And then we're going over to the Universal Audio Neve 88RS. And if we take a look at what we're doing here, we're doing a low cut at around 100 hertz, and we're doing a high pass or high cut filter at around 12 to 15K. Okay. For compression, we're using a pretty quick release. We're using a 2-to-1 ratio on the attack, and we're using a 2-to-1 ratio, and a slow attack to pull the vocals forward in the mix. We're doing very light compression here because we're going to follow this up with some other compression down the signal chain. No EQ being used. If you take a look at the compression settings here,
I could barely make a memory.
It's about 3 dB.
I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try.
Before the Neve, after.
Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny.
Okay, so the Neve is just it's just pulling the vocal a little forward in the mix, which is what we want, and giving it a little more color, which is what we're doing here, okay? So now the next plugin after that, we're going to follow this up with a Universal Audio, an 1176 Blue Stripe compressor. And again, because we're only doing a very light amount of compression on the Neve 88RS, I'm doing more of the compression here with this particular plugin. And you may be asking yourself, well, why are you doing that? And why am I using another compressor on the lead vocal? And if you watch the other videos prior to this, you'll notice that most of the compression is only being done with the Neve 88RS, with the exception of, I think, a couple of the electric guitar tracks we're using an LA3A. But the basic concept around the lead vocal especially is I'm using this, yes, to do some compression, but I'm also using this as a way to give the lead vocal a little bit of a special flavor, a little bit of uniqueness in sound. I'm using this more as a tone coloring tool. The Universal Audio Blue Stripe tends to give the vocal a little bit more of polish on the top end, and it gives a little bit of a tonal characteristic that's different from the Neve 88RS. And I'm putting this on the lead vocal track because I want the lead vocals to sound unique compared to the rest of the mix. You'll notice throughout the rest of these videos, I'm not using this plugin on any of the other tracks, or I'm not using, again, any other additional compression with the exception of the Neve, because I want the lead vocal to be special. I want it to sound a little bit different, have its own unique characteristic, because the vocal is the most important instrument in the band. So I talk a lot about this in my Made Easy products, especially Mixing Made Easy Volume 2. You can go check that out on homerecordingmadeeasy.com, shameless plug, and check out that series. And I talk a lot about the concept of using these types of plugins in a very unique way and in a very sparing way to give certain tracks a uniqueness to the sound that you don't get from the rest of the tracks inside of the mix. So we're using a 4:1 ratio. We're using a fairly quick attack and a fairly quick release. And here's what we're doing for compression.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away.
Before.
I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me.
After.
Oh, I try, but then I'll deny.
Before.
Oh, I'll try.
Okay, so listen to the "Oh, I tried," how when you don't have this compressor in, because right now it's bypassed, how that really pokes through the mix. And I'm going to back it up a little bit, and how this compressor will tame that so you don't get too much dynamics going on, and you don't get that irritation of those words popping out of the mix too much, but it doesn't sound compressed. It kind of controls the peaks.
Oh, I'll try.
Okay, that's before. Listen to "Oh, I tried" in particular. Now listen to that same section.
Oh, I'll try.
A lot more tame, but it still sounds natural and it doesn't sound overly compressed. It doesn't even sound compressed. It just sounds right. And that's what this compressor will do for you. Okay. So not only are we controlling the peaks, but we're also giving it a little bit of color that's different from the rest of the tracks. Okay. So that's what we're using on here. Now, one thing I want to say about this lead vocal, which is here. Okay. You can see how dynamic it is. Oops. Okay, you can see how the beginning of the verse is more subdued, a little bit lower in dynamics, and look at the peaks here. Okay, the other thing I'm going to tell you about all these vocal tracks, and I've already done the work, but you're going to find if you're mixing this song, or if you go out to, again, homerecordingmadeeasy.com, this song will be the quick mix for June 2016. I urge you to go check that out. But all these lead vocal tracks have an enormous amount of S's in them, an enormous amount of and a lot of and a lot of T's, S's, and C's, and a lot of those types of things in there. And because they have a lot of doubles, and especially when you get to the hook, the chorus, there's 4 vocal tracks here. The slight little S is amplified 4 times. So what I had to do is I went in and I manually had to de-ess a lot of these vocals. And even at this point where the mix is not completely done, I think I have to go in and do some more, even though I have a de-esser on that. But we'll talk about that in a second. So these lead vocals needed a lot of treatment to make these vocals sound like they sit right in the mix. So you can see how dynamic this vocal is, and this compressor really does a great job, the blue stripe here, to control that. Now let's take a look at the next plugin. The next plugin I followed it up with is a Pultec EQ P1A. Did I say that right? EQ P1A. Yeah, I said that right. Again, we're not using any EQ on the Neve 88RS. You can see the EQ is completely turned off. I'm using the Pultec EQ on this vocal. Why? Because once again, I'm trying to give this track, the lead vocal, because it's the most important, a little bit of flavor, just like with the blue stripe, and a little bit of uniqueness that I don't have on the rest of the tracks. And the EQ P1A is an amazing tube style EQ that sounds great on anything, but sounds awfully awesome on vocals. So I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to play that section of music again, and I'll flip it on halfway through. All we're really doing is at 60 Hertz, we're doing a little bit of attenuating, and at 12K, a little bit of a boost. And listen to what it does to the vocal, how it pulls it forward and it makes it pop out of the mix, but it doesn't sound harsh, okay?
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send
Here it comes.
you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me.
Before.
Oh, I tried,
Here it just opens up the vocal just a little bit. It gives it a little bit more air, but it doesn't sound like there's an EQ on it. It just sounds smooth, and that's what's great about the Pultec, okay? So again, really trying to treat this lead vocal with some extra analog processing to really make it sound smooth and sweet, okay? Now after the EQP1A, it's early in the morning, guys, I'm going over to a DeEsser. As I said a few minutes ago, this lead vocal, all these vocal tracks had an enormous amount of sibilance in them. And so I went ahead and I used the DeEsser on it. But what I also did before the DeEsser is I actually went and did a lot of manual de-essing. And let me show you quickly how I do that. And I have a video on my YouTube channel that talks about this specifically. But I'm going to shut off the DeEsser for a second. And we're going to go into this lead vocal and see if we can find an S. And I'm going to show you how you can spot them, how you can find it manually.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you.
Okay, that's send you away. If you open up and zoom in, make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. And we just zoom in, you can see right here, see where it's like as you start to zoom in on this audio, it starts to break apart here in this section. But then you see this section that's kind of a solid, almost looks like a football shape. That's the S. Okay, you'll see that on S's and T's and a lot of consonants that get really annoying. Now this has already been lowered. I can tell you S was a lot worse. And the way I would go in, let me just do a section here so you can hear it. Hear that? Hear that? That's right here. So the way to manually go in and de-ess this, and I did this again, on all the vocal tracks, I spent about 2 hours going through each track in solo mode and getting rid of a lot of these S's and T's. As you'd go in, I use my blade tool and I cut it on either side. And I come over here and I'd lower this down to get rid of. Now I wouldn't take it all the way down because I want it to sound natural. You know, you want to make sure you're careful with de-essing because you want to make sure that you don't make it sound unnatural. I would do the same thing if you were looking to get rid of a breath at the beginning of a phrase where the vocalist goes too loud into the vocal mic. You can do the same kind of technique. Okay, I would lower this down. Okay, I'm going to spread this open a little bit so you can hear it in context a little. So let's see what that sounds like.
I would send you. I would send you.
Okay, now if I bring it back to where it was,
I would send you.
okay, it gets a little more annoying. So I would lower it down, okay, to make it a little more natural.
I would send you.
Okay, so that sounds a little more natural. And I did this throughout the entire lead vocal. Okay, and I had it once, and when you looked at it, you'd see there'd be all kinds of cuts inside the lead vocal track. They were all over the place. Okay, and then what I would do when I was done is I would just highlight the events, and in Studio One, you right click and go bounce selection, and then it makes it one big block of audio. Okay, so if you don't know that trick, and again, go out to my YouTube channel and check out the video I do on manually de-essing. I go a little bit more in detail. So I basically had to do that throughout the whole track. But even after doing all of that, and like I said, I spent almost 2 hours doing that on all these vocals in the chorus, I still felt like there was a little bit too much de-essing. So I put the FabFilter DS Pro on, the Pro DS on here, which again is one of my favorite de-essers to use.
I could barely make it through the day.
You could even see here in the yellows where it's actually still doing a little bit of de-essing.
Without fear in my heart would send you away.
See that send right here? There it is. That one we just lowered. Okay, now without the de-esser, listen to what that sounds like.
In my heart would send you away.
Now with the de-esser.
Fear in my heart would send you away.
Okay, it softens it up a little bit. Now you can say, well, why would you go in and manually de-ess the vocal and spend 2 hours on it when you can just slap a de-esser on there? That is true. The problem with the de-esser that I find when you don't use it very sparingly is that you end up, what ends up happening is a de-esser will end up take all the air that you put back into the vocal. It's going to take it all the way across the whole track. So in other words, I added about 12K, or about what I add about 6 dB at 12K to give the vocal some more air on the EQ P1A, but that also adds some sibilance in there, right? So if you just put a DeEsser on the end, what it's going to do, and you over de-ess to try to get rid of all the places where the S's and the T's are really annoying, what ends up happening is you end up then flattening and taking that air that we put into the track out on the rest of the track where there wasn't S's and T's, if that makes any sense to you. So in other words, the de-esser is going to affect the entire track. It's going to take those S's and those T's down, yes, but it's also, if you have to over de-ess so much to control the S's and the T's, right, it's also going to affect the rest of the track. So you got to be very careful about that. Okay, so that's why I'm just using it very sparingly. So I manually go in and de-ess after I add in my high ends to the vocal to make it sound a little more airy. I go in, I manually de-ess, and then if I still feel like there's a little too much, I'll de-ess with a de-esser very lightly, and it doesn't affect the rest of the track too much. Okay, so I hope that kind of was a good explanation.
Could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away.
Okay, and you can hear it by doing this.
Could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me.
Okay, what I love about this is you can audition just the S's. If I just mute the double, we can audition it. Okay, so it's really cool, and I love that you have a visual display on this so you can see where it's actually hitting the S's and the T's. Okay, so that's the fab filter. That's what I did there. So that was the last effect in the chain.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away.
And now that I manually de-essed that, it sounds a little too dark, but I could fix that later. But I just wanted to show you how to do it. Now on the double track, where they come in, he comes in on just doubles up some of the lead vocal parts here. Okay, let's see, what did we do here? Same kind of thing. Okay, we used the virtual tape machine.
I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I tried.
Okay, so here on the 88 RS, we did the same thing. I cut off at around 150 hertz, rolled off the cutoff a little bit higher, and then a high cut filter at around 15K. And then I went ahead on compression. I'm using a 3-to-1 ratio with a slow attack, fast release, and I'm using the EQ on the Neve 88 RS on this particular track, not using a pull tech like I did on the lead vocal, because I want that to be special. At about 4K or so, about 6 dB.
But then I'll
This is the double. About 5 dB of compression. Okay, it's just tucked in under the lead vocal. That's all we're really doing here. And again, I went in and manually de-essed this thing pretty good because there was a lot of S's. And then I threw a Fab Filtered Pro de-esser here again.
send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep
Right here.
without you near me.
Right out, choose a lot of that and a lot of going on in these vocals. Okay, so that was the lead vocal double, and then we put everything to reverbs and delays, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we have the last vocal track in this particular video we're going to do. We're going to do this in a two-parter, which is this effect right here. It only happens a few times in the song. I could play it down here. Okay, nothing I can do is ever good enough for you. Tape machine, VCC, Neve 88 RS, no EQ at all, cutting off at around 150 hertz, 15K on the high cut. We're 3-to-1 ratio, fast release, or yeah, kind of a fast release, slow attack.
But nothing I could do is ever good enough for you.
About 3 dB of compression, okay? And then we're going over to the Pro EQ. And what I did here, this is not part of the original track. What I did here is I put what we call the telephone effect on here to kind of give it just some interesting, kind of an interesting vibe to it. This wasn't here. This is what it originally was.
But nothing I could do is ever good enough for you.
And I thought, there's no mojo there. So let's use the telephone effect. I just thought it sounded interesting. You don't have to do this on your mix.
But nothing I could do is ever good enough for you.
So I'm using the Pro EQ, and there is a preset called telephone, and that's what I used, and that was it. And then I'm using the Pro DeEsser again, just to kind of tame it. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so that was the three main vocal tracks here. Now let's talk about the reverbs and delays, and then we'll come back in the next video and take a look at the chorus tracks. Okay, so on the reverbs and delays, what I'm doing here is something that I've talked about in many of my videos. You can always go out to my YouTube channel. I have a video specifically talking about this. Is I'm using a delay and 3 reverbs stacked for the vocals to give it kind of a nice full sound where it doesn't sound too washy. And so one of the things that I do is I use a delay, send all my vocals into the delay. As you can see here, here's the lead vocal. We're going into a delay, then we're going into the first reverb, which I'm calling an office, which is really a small room, then into a plate reverb, and then to a hall reverb, and just using little doses of each one, sending them all to these light blue tracks here, and then just using dialing to taste how much of each one of those reverbs I want to give the vocal some space, to give it some ambience, but not to make it sound like it's way too washy. So by stacking these 3 reverbs and using little doses of them, it tends to give a nice professional, in my mind, polished vocal sound. Okay, so let's take a listen to what we're doing here. All right, so the first thing I'm doing is going into a delay, and I'm using the Sound Toys Echo Boy, which is my favorite delay in the world, using a preset called Studer 8 Tape. This is the best delay I've ever used. It's got there's so many presets, so many different types of delays. It's ridiculous, more than you could ever hope for. Okay, and I'm using 100% wet mix, and I'm going in sync with time of the music. And here's our delay. I'll shut off our reverbs for a second here, just so you can kind of hear the delay. So here's the delay.
I could barely make it.
Okay.
Make it through the day without fear in my heart.
Okay, that's our delay. Now the first reverb I'm using the Universal Audio Oceanway Studios, which I talked about in other parts of this series in my other videos. Again, just using it as a room. I'm using just the near microphones, or excuse me, just the mid microphone setting on a reverb. And here's what it sounds like with, and I'll exaggerate this, but here's what it sounds like with this room.
I would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to.
Okay, that's the sound. So now I just dial it into taste, and what it's going to do, it's going to enhance the delay, but it's not going to make it sound overly washed.
To keep without you near.
Now if I delete that,
Oh, I'll try.
or mute it, I should say.
But then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try.
So you can hear the delay gets a little bit more obvious. So again, it's just a matter of dialing in just enough of this room to give it a little bit more fullness. Now I'm going to a plate reverb, which I'm using the Universal Audio Lexicon 224. Love this, using a preset called Kevin Kline Vocal Plate, and I've tweaked the preset a little bit. And here's what that does to our overall vocal sound.
I could barely make it through the day.
Okay, it's a little bit too much, but I want to exaggerate it for you. And then I just dial it into taste.
Day without fear in my heart would send you away.
I'll mute it.
I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try.
Before.
But then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try.
Okay, so it just adds a little bit more flavor to the vocal. Again, it's subtle, and again, this is not totally tweaked in yet. I'm doing these videos as I'm just about finishing up the mix, so I still got a little playing around to do with this. I'm not sure I'm happy with the relationship between these reverbs and delays yet, but it's close. Then I'm following up with the hall, and I'm using the Universal Audio Dreamverb, excuse me, on a preset that I made myself. And again, just dialing it into taste. How much hall do I really want?
Make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you.
Okay, way too much, right? So I'll bring it back.
You away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. So I mute the hall.
Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try.
Okay, so that's kind of our reverb delay sound on the vocals. And then all the background vocals and the hook, they're all going, you can see they're all being sent to the same 3 reverbs to give the vocals a sense of continuity. And we'll do that in the next video. But I just wanted to show you, if I just mute all of it, okay, and start that verse again. Here's with no reverb and delay.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away.
With our effects.
I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear the difference when I bring the reverbs and delays in. It just sounds a little bit more full, but you don't listen to it and go, wow, there's a ton of reverb and delay on it. It's supposed to be subtle, okay? So that's what I kind of did there. And again, I'm going to tweak this more as we go, as I finish up my mix, but that's the basic idea. Okay, so that is the lead vocal tracks. Okay, so come back for the next video. We'll take a look at the vocal tracks in the chorus and a couple of these filler tracks, background vocal tracks, and then we'll finish up this mix. So I hope this video was helpful. So for more tips, tricks, concepts, techniques, and training around everything home recording, be sure to head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and also be sure to head out to our YouTube channel if you have not yet subscribed to YouTube. Our YouTube channel, there's probably close to 200 videos up there now, all free training with many more mixing, mastering, and recording videos as well as product demo videos. Go check out that. Go to Home Recording Made Easy on YouTube and subscribe, please. And also head out to the Facebook page if you would, and give me a like and follow me on Facebook. I'm always putting tons of content up there as well to kind of help you with your home recording, mixing and mastering and recording journey in your home studio. So until next time, this has been David with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care.